The chair now recognizes Mr. Burlison for 5 minutes.
Secretary Buttigieg, since taking the role, you've traveled quite a bit, including private flights. How often do you take private flights?
So I assume by private flights you mean the use of government aircraft assigned to my agency, and I knew this might come up, so I brought some numbers. Since getting this job, I have taken 600, these are estimates, give or take a couple, but I've taken 638 flights.
And any of those commercial?
Say about that?
Any of those commercial?
607 of them were commercial, 10 of them were on military aircraft such as Air Force One, and 21 of them were on FAA aircraft, representing about 3% of the flights.
What was there was a Freedom of Information request made of your office to reveal the costs of the travel. Have you provided those costs?
I'd have to check back with the office to see how on the traffic, but I can tell you that, yeah, we're going to comply with all FOIA
As I understand, it's been months
requests.
and you've not provided the financial numbers for that travel.
Okay. Again, I can check on the status of a FOIA request, but I can also...
You'll commit to providing that information?
We will always comply with FOIA. Okay. But I appreciate the chance to discuss this because I can't help but get the sense that some people want to make it sound as if I don't travel most of the time on commercial aircraft, which of course is untrue.
Yeah. Mr. Secretary, I think the irony for most people in my district is that they're being told that they're going to have to convert to electric vehicles to reduce their carbon footprint, and yet not everyone gets to travel the way that you do.
Just once again, the way I usually travel is in economy class aboard an airliner like everybody else. When we do it differently, it's often because it will save taxpayer money.
I want to get on.
So glad you asked this because I'm kind of excited to share some of the
Secretary
details
Buttigieg,
and put some
I want to ask, you've got some interesting policies since you've taken office. Some of them include that you spent $1 billion to fight against racist highways, which is befuddling to me. You are forcing training manuals that divide Americans. You have climate policies that appease the radical environmentalists. You renamed the NOTAM system to be a gender neutral. And yet, at the same time, while that's happening, those are your efforts, you have a failure of the NOTAM system, which has not been updated under your leadership. You had the East Palestine event that occurred, which took you nearly 3 weeks to show up for. The American citizen is currently facing countless flight delays. Just ask them. And yet we have still supply chain issues. So my question is, why are you pushing those policies when we have nuts and bolts issues to deal with?
Well, if we want to talk nuts and bolts issues, let's talk about the investments we're making to improve port infrastructure, for example, that's helped with supply chain issues. Let's talk about the fact that during the same season in which many critics said that Christmas would be canceled because of supply chain issues, we worked with ports, with the private sector and the public sector and workers to see to it that by the end of that year, there was an all-time record high in retail sales and good movements through our ports. Now, talk nuts and bolts issues. Let's talk about the 37,000 physical infrastructure projects so far and counting, supported through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And since you raised East Palestine, I hope that's an indication that we can get you on the record in favor of the Railway Safety Act.
Secretary, about railway safety, it's an interesting, when you look at the trends, according to data from the Federal Railroad Administration, the numbers since 2000 have dramatically improved. Mainline Class 1 railroads, the accident rate is down 48% since 2000. You have derailments that are down 31% since 2000. You have even hazmat issues. They're down 73% since 2000. All across the board, safety has improved, and yet starkly over the last couple of years, according to the FRA data, it shows that even though we did have a trend since 2000 of reductions, these accidents did have an increase under your watch of 13% compared to the previous year. How do you account for that?
Well, actually, so far, the rate of derailments this year is down compared to last year, but I do appreciate you being perhaps the first Republican congressman to acknowledge that overall rail accidents on my watch are substantially down from what they were 10 or 20 years ago. Now, the question, in my view, is how to get them down even further, which is why I would love to have you stand with us and not with the rail lobby on the Railway Safety
If you
Act.
care about safety, why did you turn down BNSF's ability to use drone technology to check the rails?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. One thing that really frustrates me is the characterization that we deny the ability to use drones to inspect rails. That's not true. What's true is that we require that it be supplemented by the traditional human inspection until that technology is proven out. We are not stopping them for 1 second from using
gentleman's
these
time
new
is
It was
expired.
declared
technologies.
arbitrary and capricious by a court.
The gentleman's time has expired.